Okay, part 2, if you haven't seen part 1, go watch that. So coming back to this bacteria is also classified as a parasite, which would explain why a lot of your antiparasitic drugs were working when people were coming down with COVID, because it truly was a parasite. Okay, and then coming back to this class of family, and the fact that they were lacking cell walls led me to wonder about the lipid particles that they had to surround in the COVID vaccine so they could, sneak it past whatever excuse that they get. Now, this comes from the CDC website on how vaccines work. So they like to brag about the mRNA, and it says to trigger immune response, most vaccines, blah, 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 but not the mRNA ones. And this is what I find funny. And remember, it's all in the wording. So they were talking about their studies and when they were injected in mice. And they said, even though there are issues related, are issues related to the mRNA stability. So they're basically admitting that they know that there are issues. Now, do you know who was behind creating that first synthetic genome? A company called Synthetic Genomics. So looking into synthetic genomics, they partner with ExxonMobil, who's not their only partner, whose mission is nothing less than helping to save the planet. And they're not called Synthetic Genomics anymore. They're called whatever that is. And as you look further into them, their whole mission is to reduce the carbon footprint. They're based in California, and February 2018, somebody contributed $1 million for 14 months of their research. Do you know who that was? If you said the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you would be correct. But that's not the only company where they're throwing their money. There's another company called Ginkgo Bioworks, and Ginkgo Bioworks has also teamed up with Bayer. $100 million partnership. And do you know what kinds of things that they are trying to do synthetically? Well, you guys already know about the egg shortage, and we already discussed about the formula shortage. But what else is in shortage right now? Fertilizer. What did everybody have problems with last year? Gardens. They're building a platform that lets you design organisms. They're trying to come out with artificial fertilizers. Do you guys remember that fertilizer plant over the Middle East that exploded, but really it looked like there was a missile coming down from the sky? But don't worry, they're working on artificial fertilizers for you. And it all comes back to the carbon footprint. And here's what they had to say. The global fertilizer companies are acting as if their dominance will continue. Almost like they planned their demise. I'm going to have to make a part 3 because it ain't over yet. Okay, here we are. We're on part 3, and I'm so sorry. So, when they said the global fertilizer companies are acting as if their dominance will continue, it almost sounds like that they planned their demise. Like they knew, dude, we're going to run you out of business. Here's where it's going to get really crazy. But just hang on for the ride, okay? So then they started talking about genome transplantation in bacteria, changing one species to another. And again, they're coming back to the Mycoplasma bacteria that they originally used. And they're trying to transform one type of bacteria into another. And why are they trying to do that? Climate change, of course, That's the only reason to change one thing into another. And here they kind of walk you through the study, but they were talking about a chromosome was then transplanted into these cells. After several rounds, the recipient disappeared, having been replaced by the donor. And you can pause to read if you want. And here's where they talk about transplant fully synthetic chromosome into a living organism, blah, blah, blah. Now here's where the vaccine ties back in. Could go one of two ways, theoretically, of course. Guys ever see this movie? There's a spot in this movie where all the soldiers were getting, and ultimately what it was a mind-controlling drug where the lady in charge could control all of the soldiers. She basically took over them, and they were just robots, so to speak, because they were under mind control. But if you guys remember, there was a type of fungus that they just dug up from the ice, and they were talking about the Last of Us TV show and the science behind the zombie fungus. And then, of course, scientists warn fungal infections are a growing global threat. We'll call this foreshadowing. And they are drug resistant. For the record, though, most funguses have always been drug resistant. And of course, they're blaming climate change. Here's the funny part, though. A lot of you guys probably remember the Amazon thing that was circulating where they updated their, policies, procedures, whatever it was, where you could use The wooden object to defend yourself against flesh eating. I forget how they word it. But the CDC, this is a real poster by the CDC. But did you know the Red Cross also has their own zombie apocalypse activity guide? Of course, it's to make things more interesting and to get more people involved in being prepared. But the New Zealand Medical Association also has their own zombie preparedness. I don't know why TikTok cuts off the top of my screenshot. There we go. Zombie pandemic preparedness, a cautionary observation. I'm not saying everybody's turning into zombies, but I just find it funny.